slide there. So I hope I can live up to the billing for this particular session and keep you all interested. You may have read my bio. I don't know whether you have, but I suppose a link between what you've just been talking about is until about the age of 11, I spent most of my early life in hospital. I don't wish you to, bring out the angels and have the violins, but it meant that my education was really truncated too. And when I got to the age of 11, obviously I failed my 11 plus, but there was a teacher at my secondary school, and he said to me, Chris, every 2 years there's the opportunity for people in the area, secondary modern school, to actually go to a grammar school if you're good enough. And if it hadn't been for that teacher who believed in me and helped me and nurtured me and whatever, I wouldn't have got down the track, that I've gone down. So we're going to be talking about some things today which I'm really passionate about, which is who are your best people? How do you spot them? But when you spot them, how do you nurture them? How do you coach them? How do you create the right environment that they can grow? And some of that, obviously, as I said, is inspired by my own background. The other thing as well is I've been exceptionally lucky in my life. And one of the lucky things that happened to me about 30 years ago was I met a professor. His name is Robin Stewart Coetzee, and he's a behavior guru. He's one of those immense giants in any profession, and I've worked with him. We lost touch for about 15 years because during that time I set up 4 businesses. There would have been a 5th, but my wife said, it's divorce time, Chris, if you do the 5th one. So good sense prevailed, and I didn't go down that particular track. But then I teamed up with him a short while ago, and we've written a book together which is called Who Are Your Best People, spookily. And if any of you are interested in following up from today's session, obviously I recommend that you get the book. That's the last of the commercials from me. But it goes into things that we genuinely believe in. I've got some slides. I always look at these slides as a framework. It's you that make this next 40 minutes really buzz. So I'm going to involve you, if I may. Can I first of all cover what the most important thing in business, I think, is knowing who your customer is and knowing who the audience is. So I've got 3 sets of questions. One, who has just started their business? Is anybody in the room literally just started? Just this year? No? Within the last 5 years? Okay, a few hands. Keep up your hands. Keep them up. 5 to 10 years? 10 to 20? 20 plus? Right. So first thing is all the difficult questions go to this gentleman over here because he's obviously got the experience. Okay, thank you for being a good sport. Second thing is how many people do you have in your businesses? First of all, let's take up to 10 people. Keep your hands up, please. Up to 10. Up to 20? 30? 50? Big leap, 100? 100 plus? No, 100 plus. How many people? 160. 100 and yours?
Below 10.
Oh, right, sorry, I beg your pardon. Fine.
Yeah,
it's fine. There's going to be a bit of this afternoon. Okay, so 160. Wow. And let's go revenue, up to 5 million turnover. Up to 5. 5 to 10? 10 plus? Okay, revenue?
Is it up to 5?
Yeah, you were up to 5?
Yeah.
12, okay, fine. I'm always fascinated by the mixed reactions. So we've got some really quite chunky, that's a technical term, businesses here, and we've got stacks and stacks of experience. Okay. That's really, really interesting. Okay, fine. I'm going to talk about something which sounds really simple, which is about what's talent and what does best look like to start with. Then I want to talk about some research that Robin, when I use the term Robin, that's Professor Coetzee, that he's done, and I'm using his research findings, which I thought would be useful to share with you. And then we're going to put in lots of one-liners and lots of war stories. And because I love to engage everybody in the room, if there's a one-liner, because I love them, tell it to everybody. If there's a war story that you think fits, then yell it out. Okay. Okay. Can you close your eyes, please? And can you just think about your business? And if I said to you, who is best in your business? What do you see? What are the qualities? What are the behaviors? What are the things that you go, yeah, I want more of that in my business? What do you see? You can open your eyes now. What do you see?
Commitment.
Commitment. How does that portray itself?
People that just go that extra bit.
So the extra mile. So beyond the call of duty. Discretionary effort. A higher level of. Yeah? Okay. Anybody else? Enthusiasm. Okay. What does that look like?
People are happy, generally willing to do things and go
Yeah.
extra things.
Lots of that? Yeah.
Happy, good body language.
Good body language and, yeah, okay. It's infectious too. Yes, so. Lovely. Ability and passion. Okay. A few more.
Helpfulness.
Helpfulness.
That's when you're dealing with the customer.
Yeah.
Being more helpful than you have to be.
Yeah, a link here, going the extra mile. Yeah, fine. Lovely. Yes? Commitment. What does that look like?
Being committed to what you do, being wanting to be where you are and having a stake in what you do.
Yeah. Fine. So that's both an individual quality. It also poses the question, as business leaders in this room, what can we do to generate these things that we've just talked about? Because all these things are important. Okay? Nobody mentioned great qualifications. It's interesting, isn't it?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. Knowledge is important. But you know, being provocative, you can give knowledge. Can you give many of those other things? Can you give passion to somebody? Can you give enthusiasm to somebody? My experience of life is that there are some things which are not trainable. There are some things which, there's a seed corn, you can bring them out, and part of that is, our job is to spot that stuff and then work with people and bring it out, which is really, I suppose, you know, where we're going to go over the next 35 to 40 minutes. So there's some really, really important things that we know what they look like, and we know them when they see them, and we want to get more of them. Okay. Behavior is where the action is. Don't watch what people say, watch what they do. So behavior drives our performance. Can I share something with you? I've had the privilege of coaching and working with lots and lots of men and women in a whole range of situations. And a model has sort of occurred in my mind. And this is what it is. And try and think of your own career and your own job now. My theory is that when we are young and we start in our profession, we think the world is about results and performance. In other words, if we do well and we get the right results, that the world is hunky-dory. And that probably carries on for quite some time. But then one day, we're promoted to supervisor, team leader, or we're put on a stage and we're very visible, and two other things kick in, another P and another R kick in. And that's about relationships and perceptions. So all of a sudden, you've got four things that you've got to juggle as human beings in your job. Results, performance, obviously, but also we've got to get good at relationships. And relationships are all about performance and behavior. Can you think of some very bright people in your business, but for whatever reason, they find it very difficult to communicate? Can you think of people like that? You've got nobody like that in your business. Yeah? So just being smart ain't good enough, is it? Passion, enthusiasm, wanting to work with people. These are really, really important things. And these are the things that actually, in my view, make the difference between those people who stay at that level And this is irrespective whether they're vice president or whether they are credit controller, whether they're a loo cleaner. There are some people who just go that extra mile. So if I'm a loo cleaner, I want to be the very best loo cleaner. And it's that passion, it's enthusiasm, it's all of those things that come into being. So in my experience, being the best is about some of these subtle things, these behavioural things. Okay. When Robin and I were writing the book together, I got to about the third chapter. I'm a slow learner, obviously, writing. And I worked out what this guy had done for the last 40 years and what he's brought, I think, to the arena of behaviour knowledge and how we can motivate and develop people. And if you imagine that you're watching, you're at the Olympic Games, and you're watching a gymnast, and the gymnast is doing whatever they do, treble salchows or whatever it is. I'm not very good on gymnastic movements. And in the corner are what I would call the Strictly Come Dancing judges. You know, they're sitting there. And at the end of it, we all know what happens. The gymnast has done their particular trick, and they turn to the judges, and boards go up. 5.9, 5.6, 5.5. And if you tapped a judge on the shoulder at that point, they could tell you why they gave those particular points. Logically, we all know that. What the research indicates is that best people actually, rather like the judges and the people who are performing, best people know how to match their behaviours to the requirement of the job. So low performance looks like this. Job behaviour is required here, person is over here, that's low. Middle is like this. What does great performance look like? It looks like this. It's like an eclipse. It's when the person doing the job behaves within the requirements of the job. That's 40 years now of research done in 1 minute. That's what this is all about. So best people know how to behave. So it begs a question in our companies, do we spend enough time, be honest, do we spend enough time talking to our people and working with our people about what great behaviour looks like? Because, you know, if you don't know what 10 out of 10 looks like, it's quite difficult to achieve it, isn't it? Personally, I've worked in huge corporations, I've worked with small businesses, the whole range, and there's one feature that sort of I notice all the time, that we seem in this country, whether it's deeply cultural, I don't know, but it seems in this country, because this is the one I know best, that we spend a lot of time on the what, but we expect people to pick up the how as they go along. So the what is all about KPIs and targets and accountabilities and all of that stuff. And the job specs, they are really well drilled. But actually, if we spent more time on thinking about behaviours and doing behaviour specifications, how do you want this job to look like? You know, what do you want this job to look like? So if I walked into a room and I saw this person performing it, you know, what would I want to see? And when you open your eyes to that, for me, it opens up and liberates a whole new way of coaching and mentoring and teaching, you know, our people. Does that make sense? Does that? Yeah? Okay. If I can explain, I mentioned that when I use the word research, the research comes from the book, Who Are Your Best People? And Professor Kotze came up with something which I think is really, really interesting. He asked thousands and thousands of managers, what did they do? Just describe. This isn't built on any big theory about leadership, management development. It's just, what do you do? And he found that everything that they tended to talk about tended to form into the two bottom areas. There are accelerating behaviours, which are things to do with improving things and making things better in your job. And they're what I would call sustaining things, which are about doing the basic job, tying things down. The first thing he worked out, there's no good or bad to either of those, but every job has a different mix. And it depends on where the business is, where the market is, and what you want the person to actually do. But for me, the most important thing that he found out, when he talked with people, he found out that lots of them talked about what he began to talk about with me, blocking behaviours. These are things which we all do in our work, and they are behaviours that we use in response to external factors. It's to do with pressure, it's to do with frustration, it's to do with uncertainty, but we do them all. And the typical responses are, we fight something, we flight something, so we avoid it, or we submit to it, so we avoid conflict. And those three things all come together in blocking behaviours. High performers know how to work out what is going on, and they do something about it much quicker than lower performers. So in other words, hindrances, when they hit a high performer, they're sorted much quicker. In the book, we go into a lot more detail on precisely what that means and how it looks in a number of different examples. But blocking behaviours are to do with frustration, therefore, uncertainty. You can see it happening in work situations, and they account for an enormous loss in energy. So anything we can do as leaders, as managers, to reduce that uncertainty, to work with our people, to make sure that they understand the key elements of the job, the behaviours that we're looking for, all of that stuff can reduce blocking behaviours. So in a nutshell, it doesn't look much for 40 years of research, does it? But that's what really, really good people, that's what really great people do. They hit the bullseye. They know what 10 out of 10 looks like, and if you don't tell them, they ask. So encouraging a climate where people ask lots of questions. You know, there are no dumb questions. There can be some dumb answers, but there are no dumb questions. Creating a culture where people really, really ask those questions is really, really important. In your business, if the market shifts, would your behaviours shift inside your business? Would you behave differently? Would you need to behave differently? If your boss changed, would you behave differently? Yeah? If you had a new person in your team, would you behave differently? Yeah, all of those. So what we found out is that performance, the biggest determinant of performance, which is behaviour, and behaviour is determined by the situation. So change the situation, you need to change behaviour, which is one of the most difficult things in businesses when you're driving change. So we need to be constantly on the alert. What is the new game in town? What do we want our people to do? Thought process. Are you doing that at the moment in your companies? Are you spending enough time with your people describing the new behaviours that you need? And of course, when you go through market change, very often you've got to say goodbye to stuff as well as saying hello to stuff. Not an easy thing to do. Okay. Have any of you heard of Marcus Buckingham in the room? Marcus Buckingham. I thought I would introduce this. He's one of those giants, for me anyway, in terms of understanding attitudes in the workplace. And he was a researcher at Gallup, and they crunched 30 years' worth of attitude survey data. And their question was, if we're so smart at measuring attitudes and behaviours, is there any correlation between profitability, shareholder value, and how good a company is? Can we correlate and come up with what are the critical questions that seem to define it? And they did. And they called it Q12, because spookily, there were 12 questions. So I'm going to show you the 12 questions that they came up with. And the 12 questions are so simple. And in everybody's business here, if you're interested in following it up, if you just Google on Marcus Buckingham, you'll find Q12, and you can turn it into your own attitude survey. I know clients who actually do that already. Some obviously use some much more sophisticated models, and you might already be doing some. But I just thought I'd like to share this with you, because this is all about how we, as leaders and managers, can create a high engagement culture and bring out the best in people. So the first 6, none of them rocket science, are they? Do I know what is expected of me at work? Do I have the materials and equipment that I need in order to do my work right? Number 3, I saw Marcus Buckingham interviewed on his work, and he said number 3 appeared to be the absolutely key question, that whenever he looked at survey results, he looked at whether people responding highly to that question. If it's high, it's odds on that this business is profitable. I thought, which is fascinating. And he wrote an article, which is superb, called What Great Managers Do. And the other book that he put together was called The Strengths Revolution, which is all about, surprisingly, how you bring the best out in people. And those were the other half a dozen there. One of the questions that a friend of mine who runs a huge attitude survey business, he always insists with the client that they put in, is a very simple question: would you ask your best buddy to join your company? And whenever he looks at all the sophisticated results, his eyes are always drawn to that particular question. Because he says, if that tends to be high, it's odds on profitability, return on investment, and everything else is high in that particular business. So that's Marcus Buckingham, not my work. And I think if you haven't already seen it, it's really useful stuff. Okay, so what can we do to create this culture and to really manage our people well? Well, if I was running and setting up another business again, there were 4 things that I would do. 4 things that I wish I'd spent more time on in the past. So this is my desert islet discs bit. These are 4 that I would take to my next startup. Number 1, I would spend more time with all of my people on not just defining the what of their roles, but on their how, spending time on behaviours. It's what we do. Don't watch people's lips, watch where they walk. The second thing that I've learnt, which I'd like to pass on, is that you can't improve anybody's performance in any scenario, whether it's a small business or large business, without 3 pieces of information. 1, if it's me, I need to know what I'm currently doing. I need to know, secondly, what are the things that I should be doing differently. And the third thing that I need to know what are the things that are hindering me, the blockers that I talked about. If you have those 3 things in your armory, you will have a strong appraisal process, a strong coaching process, and a strong mentoring process. And obviously you can build on that with your relationship with your people. Without those 3 things, I've begun to understand that many of my early years, when I was trying to get the best out of my team, I was approaching it in a slightly naive way. So that's my observation, those 3 things. None of these are rocket science, are they? But sometimes in the heat of battle, we don't necessarily have them at our fingertips or even think about them. The third one is Marcus Buckingham again, Strengths Revolution. Good managers, great managers, always seem to find out what their people are good at and give them as many opportunities as they can to be good at that on a day-to-day basis. And the fourth one is stretching people and building their self-belief and taking us right back to the beginning, helping them to be enthusiastic, helping them to be passionate, helping them to express themselves. That's what all the research indicates. Help people to express themselves, give them those opportunities, and you'll get that back in spades in your own companies. So those are the 4 desert islet discs things that I would take to my new startup. I've always approached sessions like this, I'd like to have something to take away in my back pocket. If you're interested in finding out more about behaviours and how to make them more central in your business, because that's where the action really is, guys. It's how do you create the right behaviours in your business. That's the book on the right. But the book on the left, have any of you seen that book before, Moments of Truth? It's a devastating read, and it's great because it's about that thick. And it's about 30 years old now. And the central piece of the book is to say that in all of our businesses in this room, there are probably 5 to 8 things that if we get really right on the customer experience, if we get those really right, we have profit, we have quality, we have customer satisfaction, and we can take our teams with us because they know exactly what those things are. And he calls those moments of truth. So if you take your company and you put it out on a line like this and you go, these are the 6 things, and then you put the behaviors alongside those things, then everybody in the whole company knows what to do at the right time. The book has been used in customer service, obviously, but it's also been used from an internal customer point of view. It works beautifully in that particular way, getting people to understand that if I'm working with you, your inputs are my outputs, and the quality of what I do affects you, and so on. And if I can just end with a quote from Jan Carlsen, who wrote this book, which for me is sort of hopefully sums up what we've been covering today. Well, I'll give you the whole thing. So this is right at the tail end of this book. There is no better way to sum up my experiences than with the story about the 2 stonecutters who were chipping square blocks out of granite. A visitor to the quarry asked them what they were doing. The first stonecutter looked rather sour. He grumbled, "I'm cutting this damn stone into a block." The second, who looked pleased with his work, replied proudly, "I'm on this team that's building a cathedral." A worker, Jan Carlsen says, who can envision the whole cathedral and has been given responsibility for constructing his own portion of it is far more satisfied and productive than the worker who sees the granite before him. A true leader is one who designs the cathedral and then shares the vision that inspires others to build it. I just thought that sort of, for me anyway, sort of sums up, what we're doing in our businesses. The more we can create that infectious enthusiasm that we talked about, the commitment, the passion, the more we can do that, I think that's a one-line job spec. That's our job. And I think that you do it through encouraging behaviours. But if we're going to encourage, we've got to give people the rules of the game. So work hard as a team, as your top team in particular, on behaviours, be specific, and help people see what 10 out of 10 looks like. And you'll be gobsmacked at the results. That's what all the research indicates. And that's how I've spent the last 30 years of my life, working with companies, helping them try to create those sort of cultures. That's enough of me. Thank you so much. You've been very quiet, and hopefully that's, I don't know whether that's a good sign or a bad sign. Are there any questions on anything that I've said, anything at all?
I have a question on this whole praising your workers.
Appraising?
Praise.
Praise, yeah.
If you employ somebody to do a job and you give them the criteria, you expect that level. Now, I object to have to, well, not object, it's not that, but, to actually have to praise them for doing their job. I think, go this much over and I'll say, oh, that was amazing.
Yeah.
I noticed you did this. But why do people expect to be praised for what they're expected to do?
I'll tell you a little story.
Yes.
I said to the CEO, I've been self-employed since '82, so I left corporate life a long time ago, 4 startups and all of that stuff in the middle. And I once said to him, I think even average performance ought to be congratulated. And it was in the context of a big get-together. So I felt liberated enough to say that. Otherwise, it might not have been onwards and upwards career move. And where I was really getting at was, I think there's a difference between intellectually framing praise. We are, all of us in this room, essentially have the same circuitry that we had when the woolly mammoths were patrolling the world. Essentially, it's an emotional circuitry. So I approach your question from an emotional point of view. Recognition and respect within authenticity is, I think, very, very powerful.
Recognition I can understand. This actual praise thing drives me insane. You did a lovely job today. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
That's fine, but this whole even the bonus system. A bonus is a privilege. It's something you give people
Yeah, definitely.
when they do. But but we always get a bonus. We have to get a bonus. It's part of the.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And I know I'm a very aggressive South African. this what you call a reputation of being aggressive. But to me, that's dishonesty. And I battle to fit it into this politically correct world of yours.
Yeah, no, I think you're touching on so many angles there. I'm sure that there are so many angles to what you've said there. I think being authentic in a business, I think having managers who work with their teams to bring out the best in them, equally stepping up to when things aren't going well, but equally, I'm a great believer in, that was great.
Yeah.
I don't think that's bullshit. I don't think it's inappropriate, and I think it responds to something which is beyond work. It's beyond work. It's about your relationship with your people. In a sense, it's to do with that last quote. It's about making something feel wholesome and good, that you are part of something. And I think we all have that need inside us. But I agree with you, hamming, just for the sake of hamming, I'm not into that. Anybody else want to comment on that? Does that make sense?
It begs a question. Is your business successful? Would be the first question. And if it is, then whatever style you adopt seems to work.
Yeah.
But I also share there's a bit of a culture around at the moment, which I would call something like entitlement.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I feel entitled to have it without actually putting the effort in.
You've got to work for it. Yeah. Yeah.
Fundamentally, if it works in your business.
Well, the thing is, I've only been in this country working here for 3 years, and I find it very difficult because the culture is so different.
Yes.
And it's this whole, but of course I must have it.
Yes.
For example, I work in a dentalist practice, and NHS is now removing all orthodontics for children. I think it's horrific, I really do, because it's been there, because they're the people that need it most. But what amused me was this whole attitude. They can't do that. They have to do it. And I
Yeah.
think pensions is something else you guys are so spoiled. In South Africa, NHS dentistry, you don't have it in South Africa. So if you want a dentist, you pay for it.
Yeah.
And if you don't, your pension, we all have pensions. If you don't have a pension, you don't have a pension. Standing in queue for a government pension is almost non-productive. But it's not the case of, oh, we need to cut down or we need to help. It's a case of, but we have to. We have to. And then they come into the job situation where that same thing.
Yeah.
And I think, hang on, this doesn't
No,
gel for me.
I think somebody else put their hand up. No, yeah, great. Yeah.
No, I personally agree. It
Yeah.
works better if you're asking somebody working for you to build a cathedral with you rather than just to be
Yes.
put up.
Yeah.
You say to them, I'd like you to come work for me.
Yeah.
We're going to build a cathedral just using your
Yeah.
facility.
Yeah.
Rather than, I'd like you to come to work for me
Yeah.
and cut blocks.
Yeah, precisely.
Think when you
It's
go,
the mindset.
yes, and maybe sometimes people who demand things, oh, I have a right to this.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's because they haven't been.
Yeah.
Do you know,
Yeah.
that was great, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't actually cost anything. And as an employer, you are grateful. I know you pay that person, but you are still grateful that they're doing a good job for you.
Absolutely.
Without them, you wouldn't be successful in business, or you wouldn't have anybody to do this job that you can't do.
Agreed.
So you are, yes, I know you pay them,
Yeah.
and that's the contract between you. You do that
Yeah.
because I'm building a cathedral, so I need you to cut the block
Yeah.
because I've designed the cathedral, but I can't cut block. So I'm very grateful to you, and I give you money for that. But because I'm also grateful, I can turn around and say, thanks for that.
Yeah.
You know, you cut that block brilliantly because I can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think with that, eventually they will actually build you 2 blocks instead of the one that
Yeah.
they paid to do.
I love it. I'm right. I'm absolutely right with you. And while the two of you were talking, I remember one project. I won't say the name of the customer. It's a huge retailer, one of the hardest-nosed companies I've ever worked with. And I was there for about 3 months, and you get to know a culture pretty much in that time. And after about 6 weeks, I said to one of the managers, I've noticed a number of things, but I said, I've noticed one thing. Nobody ever gets praised around here. I haven't heard anybody get praised. And the manager said to me, practically what you were saying, the reverse, if you like, of what you were saying, which was, well, we pay people, why should you praise people for... And I said, no, I think you're missing the whole point of life. You know, so I don't want to work in that type of culture. And I'm a sample of one. And I think that's what Marcus Buckingham was picking up on the Q12 questions. We have the emotional circuitry. It's not complicated, actually, but you've got to approach it from an emotional point of view. It's not just about, you know, business. And I think that there are some deep cultural differences there that you bring out.
Just picking up from the points of the lady and the lady behind, suppose the performance is really not up to the mark,
yeah,
and it's time for appraisal. How do you communicate that in a positive way,
yeah,
so that the performance actually improves? Because the sense of entitlement will remain forever, yeah, if you do not communicate that you, yeah, are not doing what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think many managers struggle with this enormously, and some of it is, well, first of all, if you walk the job and you've done the things that I was suggesting you do about knowing what 10 out of 10 looks like, walking the job, letting your people have feedback on a regular basis, praise in the right way, where an individual is falling below, equally talking that one through. I run a program which is called Handling Difficult Conversations, and 2 comments come up all the time from managers. One, can I say that? There's this political correctness thing that's come up. So if you imagine it's a scenario, you're working, I'm working for you, and this is a capability meeting. And the whole purpose of this meeting is to get to the bottom of what's going on here. And I've watched managers role play this, and it's like going round the houses, and we're going round the houses, nobody can quite get there. And then I do this. What's your name? Sonab. Okay. Sonab, you're a really valued member of this team. You know, the stonecutters, you're a really valued member of this team. Over the last 3 weeks, we've had 3 discussions, but it's still happening. What's going on? And the managers look at me and go, can you say that? So there has been some political correctness that's gone over the last. I passionately believe that if you're working for me or whatever, honesty between the 2 of us is an essential part of the contract. But you equally, I don't believe people go to work to bugger things up. All the research indicates that 95% of low performance is to do with one thing: lack of understanding about what you're supposed to be delivering, and uncertainty about what you're supposed to be delivering. So clarity in role specs and behaviour specs is our safe ground. Then it depersonalises it, and then it makes it easier to have those discussions. If you're interested, if anybody is interested, I've got 10 top tips for how to handle difficult conversations, and I'd be delighted to send them to you. And you know, when you see them, you'll go, phew, that guy's delivering a few basic things, isn't he? Because, you know, it's not rocket science. It's about a mindset. It's about managers. If managers don't want to manage people, they shouldn't be managers in the first place, number one. If they don't see it as their job, which is to get the best out of people, they shouldn't be doing the job. And that explains many of the issues that we're talking about. And I came from the HR profession, where why the hell should we sign off somebody, give them 10 people, which is huge responsibility, and we're prepared to do that without any training or development, and yet we wouldn't give them 10 computers because it's against budget. You know, it's sort of, I'm on my soapbox now. So, any more questions, or we'll bring this to a close. Can I say thank you so much for staying and participating and working with me. I hope you've had a lovely time at Sage. I've noticed quite a few people were here yesterday as well as today, so hopefully you've got some really good value out of the day or the 2 days. It's been a privilege to be here. So if I hadn't already come across, this stuff's important, I think, and I hope you go back and think about a few things. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you.